I am privileged to be able to speak to this morning to Bob Percesepe, and you're in Leland, North Carolina. Is that right?
Actually, Southport, North Carolina.
Southport, North Carolina.
Right. Leland is a big metropolis of
Okay.
maybe 10,000 people. Southport is a really big metropolis of about 3,500 people.
And you've been one of our most consistently successful graduates and had to reinvent yourself at least twice that I know of. You know, first of all, moving out of commercial and into residential out of necessity. And second, leaving New York and moving to North Carolina with knowing nobody to a completely strange market. And through it all, you've been in R squared coaching. I think your team has stayed together the longest of any team, might be past 11 years now, with almost all the same people for that long. Why do you suppose your team has stayed together so long?
I think that I was like just kind of lumped in a group that was, for whatever reason, whether it was accidental or whether it was deliberate, I really don't know. But we're all like-minded thinkers. We all think the same way. We all think like business people. There's a marriage of the minds in this group that is absolutely amazing. I'm really privileged to be with these guys. And, we all bring a different dynamic as a result of our different marketplaces. But I think the longevity comes as a result of, whatever happens, R squared stays in R squared. And we really stick to that and we believe that. And I think it's helped grow us.
It's a nice, safe space, confidential.
It
Totally.
is. I mean, you could ask anybody in our group, anybody, and they'll tell you that the one time of the week that we look forward to is Monday mornings at 8 o'clock Eastern, because we do have one or two people that are outside of our time zone. But you can ask any of us, and we'll say the same thing. There is always a really interesting group dynamic that's built on sharing.
Now, you're the author of the World-Class Service Commitment, both to a seller and to a buyer. I promote it heavily because I think it's an amazing statement that you've written. How did that come about, and what's been the net result of that for using that for you?
I, I would have to say that the concept, if you want to call it a concept, came as a result of things that Floyd has been teaching us for decades. And it always goes back in my mind to that simple statement that Floyd says: people don't care how much you know, they just want to know that you care.
Yeah.
And I had this kind of like epiphany several years ago that it was almost like a preacher, preaching one verse in a Southern Baptist church, like what can happen if you do one little thing. And I was realizing that, if you focus on service and not just average service, if you focus on world-class service, the results just keep coming and coming and coming. And it's noticeable in the consumer, whether it's a buyer or seller, they see it, they grasp it, they understand it. And it's just a very pleasant surprise to them when they see the level of service that me and my company provide to them.
Now, in discussion, by the way, if you'd like a copy of Bob's world-class service commitment, either for sellers or for buyers, just email info@floydwickman.com and we'll make sure we get you a copy because it's a brilliant document, both of them. You've been talking this year about dusting off the specific buyer approach in your market. Now, why are you using that and what's working with it?
Well, I'm using it because it was something that Floyd introduced many, many years ago. I don't think we had it as I wouldn't say that the market at that time was similar to what it is right now. But in the early 2000s, we were running into the same problem that we're running into now, and that is a very, very limited inventory. I did not think that in my marketplace, which is very much a second home beach market, and it's kind of a middle class beach market. Um, I didn't think that I would ever really ever run short of inventory. I mean, I always had a very strong inventory, and I always felt that that would never stop. But man, it stopped. And this past year in 2020, it became very evident to me that my agents were struggling trying to find listings for their buyer clients, and they had to really work hard at landing good listings for their buyers that were a little less competitive. So my last three transactions personally as an agent, um, I actually had to get my buyer into an exclusive agency agreement. This happened three times in the last 6 weeks. And identify a property specifically for them. And, we did it by mail, we did it by door knocking, we did it by calling, we did it by going back to old expireds, I even went back to old FSBOs and current FSBOs and anything that I could do to uncover a listing for a couple of these folks that had a real housing need. And I think that, right now there is a strong need for housing across the board, across the country. So this dynamic of using the specific buyer approach really was nothing new to me. It was just something that Floyd had introduced to me, decades ago, but it's still relevant. The system is still the same. The process is still the same. You're serving the client. You're finding a need for the buyer. You're finding a need for the seller, and you're marrying them together. But the beautiful part is, you do get to get a double-sided deal every now and then, and that part really has been pretty cool. So I've done it three times in the last 6 weeks, and it's kind of nice to double your revenue stream simply as a result of a relatively easy process.
And again, serving the client.
Hey, that goes to world class. It's a world class commitment to service. I tell everybody, and I'm not afraid to say it. Look, if you're the kind of guy that likes to drive a 1982 Toyota, we're probably not a good fit for each other. But if you like to drive a Maserati, we need to talk.
There you go. Now, you mentioned expireds. You're still doing your expired campaign, correct?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, it's the foundation of our business.
That's great. Would you describe what you do? What's the system?
We have a system that involves one of our team members, my assistant actually, she scrubs the multiple listing service every day. And we do a mail campaign that's really crazy aggressive. I mean, it's very aggressive. We send out a card, a personalized card, 6 of them, one every 4 days. And then if we exhaust that 6-card campaign in 4 days, with 4-day gaps in between, we put them on a quarterly campaign until the listing either is listed with another agent or we list it, or they tell us to stop mailing them stuff. And in between that card campaign, I'm a big promoter of an auto dialer system. We use Vulcan 7. And I call those folks from the day their property expired, and we go right down the line, and we call them pretty regularly, at least 4 to 5 times until we get them on the phone or we get some kind of a commitment or some kind of a decision. Expired listings right now are harder to win than they ever have been before. But for any agent out there that's listening, do not believe that there are no expireds, because I'm going to tell you there are expireds. I mean, it's a smaller pool. But we are consistently winning expired listings.
So are you also seeing an influx of new agents this year in your market, as small as it is?
Well, I am, this is incredible, but I am the manager of the North Carolina Regional Multiple Listing Service. We are the 10th largest MLS in the country in a very small rural market. So it sounds crazy, but we are a really large MLS. And in my little association, in the month of March, we had 35 new members and 10 new companies join us in the month of March. Now, keep in mind, we are in a micro niche market, and to have 35 new members in less than 30 days and 10 new companies, that's incredible.
What do you think this means for our business, for the industry?
Well, in our last newsletter that we put out, I mean, I thought that it was interesting. comparing the dynamic of where the market is today, and are we facing a housing bubble that's going to be similar to 2007 and 2008? I don't think we are, because there's a couple things that differentiate our market today from that market in 2007 and 2008. It looks like that the housing demand is very, very real. People are not using their homes as banks anymore.
Yeah,
The smart homeowner is keeping their home
right.
like they're just not burdening the home with debt. So people have equity in their homes, and they're thinking a little smarter about the way that they use their home ownership position. But the reality is that the NAR has been saying for a couple of years that 74% of the purchasing community is going to be of the millennial generation. These are people that are getting out of mom and dad's basements. These are people that are getting married. These are people that are having children, and they have a need for housing, at whatever level they see necessary for their housing demand. So we have an actual, very true housing shortage as a result of that. And combined with the fact that builders and developers are finding it more and more difficult to be profitable when they build. So the resale market is growing stronger and stronger and stronger, thus leading to agents that see real estate to be a good career. Now, I mean, for decades, we've been challenged with agents that jump into the business thinking that, this is an easy job. And anybody who's been in it for more than a day knows that this is a tough job. Selling real estate is not for the weak-willed. So the demand for agents, I think, is realistic and strong, and it's a little difficult to share that competitive wealth, but it seems to be working.
So in your position with the multiple listing system, and I know you have some influence statewide, what do you see as the issues both for the Carolinas and for the industry as a whole?
The major challenge in I can say in specifically in coastal North Carolina is the inventory shortage. I think that what our local multiple listing service is trying to do is we're trying to join hands with agents that are outside of our market to make it easier to show our inventory, and we're trying everything we can do to try and get our agents to embrace the concept that you cannot put a wall around any market, and that's slowly happening. And if anybody believes that you can put a wall around any market, you're going to run into challenges even attempting to do that. Whether you've got some kind of natural barrier like a river or a mountain or something that interferes with the cross boundary marketing disorder. That's what it's called. That's what the MLSs call it. We're embracing that. We're trying to get agents from outside of our market that are licensed in the state to come into our market. We're not hiding anything from them, and we want them to be a little bit more open to not just joining our multiple listing service and our association, but letting them know that we really want them and we need them. So as the second home market develops, and this transient society that we're living in as a result of the COVID shift, I think that's our number one challenge, because we really, really need to embrace the virtual technology that's going into getting people into homes from outside of their markets. And these are people that need real estate professionals. I think that's going to be our number one issue for the next year or so.
And you've identified a need that a lot of quote real estate professionals actually should embrace, which is getting a closing coordinator. You've actually started a service that does that, haven't you?
Yes, that was an interesting way that evolved. I've always had a closing coordinator for many, many years. My own closing coordinator recently retired, and I knew what it was like to go into a business like mine without a good solid experienced closing coordinator. I don't like to do $10 an hour work. I never have liked it. I never will like it. There's nothing about that that interests me, and I would rather delegate the administrative tasks of my business to somebody who's, number one, more qualified, and number two, it turns me to really do things that really benefit the business a little bit more. I follow Floyd's teachings in that regard to the letter. I mean, I really believe that we should only be doing four things. If you're a real estate professional, you should be going on listing appointments and negotiating for your sellers at the best level that you can. You should only be working with qualified and quantified buyers and have one in your car all the time. You should be networking and prospecting for new sources of revenue nonstop. And you should really be maintaining, building, and nurturing a saleable book of business. And those are the four things that you should be doing at all times. And I don't know that every realtor grasps that concept, because they really want to get tangled up and wrapped around the axle of doing the menial $10 an hour work. I don't like to do $10 an hour work. I only want to do $300 an hour work. So our transaction service company really came as a result of, as any good idea, it happened accidentally. We had a close personal friend of ours that was a closing coordinator for probably the largest tract builder in the country, and then turned that into working for attorneys as a closing coordinator. And she came to us and she said to me, "Bobby, there must be a place in your company for me." And I said, "No, we really don't, unless you want to be an agent, I don't really have a place for you." And then, like all good ideas, they don't come from me. This one came from my wife. And she said something to me that I've always said, and I never really, you know, practiced what I preached in that regard. If you see people that have talent, you find a place for them.
Right.
So we came up with this idea to offer transaction service coordination from contract to closing to any agent or team that has a specific level of volume. We do it virtually. It's a super, when I say virtually, it's not like you get some kind of virtual guy in Pakistan. It's you get a dedicated closing coordinator for your business, and we bring you from contract to closing. It's a very, very much hands-on service. It's a concierge styled service, very personal. And this thing just took off. And we've got agents, we've got agents in Michigan and Ohio and Texas, and
So it works across state borders.
works across state borders. We've got clients, and I think we're going to sign one today in California.
Oh, so do they pay per transaction, or is it a
Flat fee. We pay per transaction.
okay?
And we've discovered that, and this is kind of funny when I say this, but there's no mathematical way that any team or any company can keep a paid staff person on a payroll that's a dedicated transaction coordinator. There's just no way, they've got all the expenses that go with a full-time staff person that people don't think about. I mean, the ancillary expenses of,
Right.
Payroll taxes and unemployment insurance and workman's comp. And we don't have that. They don't have that with us. I mean, we can do it at a fraction of the cost. And the service is world-class service. Our closing coordinators are totally committed to world-class service, mostly because Debbie and I just drill it into all of our own heads. We just drill that. Look, if you can't provide world-class service, we don't want to be in this business. So it really has blossomed, and more importantly, it's become a very available, recognizable need. Agents and teams that understand the dynamic of closing business and focusing the agent's attention on the four things we talked about, they get it. They totally get it. Agents should not be doing $10 an hour work. That's all there is to it.
So how would an agent or a team or even a brokerage find out about this transaction service?
Info at bluechip-re.com. Info at bluechip-re.com, or go to our website at bluechiptransact.com.
Bluechiptransact.com.
That's right. Phone numbers on the site, email addresses on the site. We just brought on a new closing coordinator Friday because of our blossoming business. It's been really interesting. I can't wait till the testimonials start coming in, because we had a glowing testimonial from a client, not just one of our agents, but one of the homeowners whose home that was sold. Um, it, it it shines out. It makes the agent, I should say, shine out. And you know what's really interesting? If you look at my testimonials, it's always Bob and his team
Yeah.
did a great job. So we're making our closing coordinators part of an extension of your team. So it's been working brilliantly. And we definitely bring we definitely bring the contract right to the closing. And the more that we get to work with one individual agent, the more specific we get on the responsibilities that you've given us. We also we do a 30, a 60, and a 90-day mandatory review of where you are. We try to eliminate redundant processes, and what we're really trying to do is streamline the agent's business so that they save money, and we're doing that.
Brilliant. Congratulations on
Thank you, thank you. Well,
concept and well executed. So I'm going to wrap up with asking you for a testimonial. What has been in coaching for 11 years now? What has that done for you, and who do you think should be in R squared coaching?
look, I can't. We don't have enough time for that, Mike. Um, I my part in R squared is, so I love to listen to what everybody else has to say. I will tell you that every fundamental concept of real estate managing and franchising and ownership and everything has come from a Floyd Wickman teaching. So R squared has just really just extended that for me. And it is the highlight of my week, that 60 minutes every Friday morning at 8 o'clock. Um, I can't even go on with the benefits. And here's the thing: since we're living in this more and more virtual world, and agents that are kind of getting away from the large franchises that are, big boxed franchises that, really do training with hundreds of agents at the same time. I'm not faulting them, but there's a lot of us that are kind of like out standing in the desert. Really, there's not many people that we can go to or talk to or mastermind with. And I'm one of those people. I kind of stand on a desert most of the time. I'm alone. But my Floyd Wickman family of R squared partners, man, that's like water on the desert for me, because I really, really take just about everything that I learn or any idea that I can share. I bring it to R squared. I mean, it's I can't even go on, without almost getting in tears about the way I feel about this group of people that I have the privilege to be with, and of course you, Mary.
I feel the same way. Thank you, Bob.
My pleasure.